Hey friends, I'm so glad you could join me today for the very first ever podcast. I'm your host, the BreakAway Homesteader. The title speaks for itself. I am a homesteader, still in training, of course, and learning to live a self-sufficient life and depend on as little as I can on the economy. I've been a homesteader for 9 years now and look forward to talk to you about today's topic. But before I do, I want to thank our sponsors from Patreon for making this podcast possible. Today's subject is homesteading versus prepping. At first glance, there seems to be a number of similarities between the two, but both groups have a great deal of focus on self-sufficiency and off-grid living. But the differentiating factors seem to be the driving force behind both subjects. If I were to tell you that Brad from the channel Full Spectrum Survival is a prepper, what kind of person do you see in your mind that he would be? Most people would see a single male in his late 20s to late 40s wearing camouflage and loaded down with guns, knives, and ammo. He would open carry 4 guns and tell you not to make any sudden moves because he's a former ninja, trained to kill with his thumbs if provoked. You'd find him living in a basement or underground bunker piled high with MREs, water, and food-grade buckets filled with rice and beans packed into mylar bags stacked to the ceiling. But if I were to tell you that Brad was a homesteader, wouldn't you get a completely different picture? You would likely picture Brad and his wife Kelly and children who are homeschooled to protect them from the influences of public education. You see a family who works together to harvest their garden and to care for their livestock. They would eat what they could fresh and can or dehydrate the rest to preserve their bounty, to preserve it for winter. So with that in your head, let's digress and get back on to topic. It's homesteaders versus preppers after all. So I'm going to take the topic and I'm going to run with it. Homesteaders versus preppers. Homesteaders seem drawn to this self-sufficiency because they wish to live more holistically with the world around them, having first-hand experience with their food sources, be that through gardening, animal husbandry, or backyard chicken coops, and revisiting the pioneering styles of their previous generations. Some homesteaders may spin their own yarn, sew their own clothes, and make cheese from milk that were given by the few goats or sheep that they keep on a small plot of land. They save their seeds, waste nothing, and spend weekends canning and preserving food, so they have a hearty bounty to draw from over the winter months. The reality is that homesteaders are frugal people that just want to be immersed in what's best in life. They would rather know where their livelihood comes from, instead of trusting a system that pushes things that seem safe, but in fact are not. Any food that has been fortified with nutrition to be nutritious is not a safe product. It's a half-assed excuse to pump you full of chemicals to keep your gut jacked up and your cravings up for more. So you keep going to the doctor for your gut issues, and they keep prescribing medications that causes some more other symptoms to occur. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you reliant on the things you do not need. Being able to be a steward to a flock of chickens that provide meat and eggs, to a goat that provides milk, to a sheep that provides wool, a homesteader tries to do everything they can, or at least a percentage, as close as home to possible. But let me tell you from experience, we're not Amish people. We enjoy technology as well. We are much more focused on the day-to-day activities needed to maintain the homestead. We focus on crafting and do-it-yourself skills as a way of getting back to the life our ancestors led. We can preserve the food we've grown as a way of storing up for a lean winter and tend to gradually increase our self-sufficiency over the years in eye towards building a better future. We are focused on putting down roots and living off the land for sustainability and better health over time. Preppers. Preppers. Preppers seem to be the more paranoid bunch of people, and their drive towards self-sufficiency isn't born of a desire to get back to the land, but rather in preparation for whatever overwhelming event is just around the corner. These folks are getting ready for when the shit hits the fan, and you can be sure they will be well prepared when it does. Many have several supplies of canned goods, dried staples, stored water, along with an arsenal of weapons to fend off the inevitable zombie-like hordes that'll come after their food and supplies when everything goes crazy in the world. If they do grow any food around the property, it's hidden in the woods and camouflaged so the invaders won't realize that it's a food crop. And the concertina wire around that will keep any trespassers from taking it. It is true that many preppers focus on more security, self-defense, and stockpiling gear and gadgets than homesteaders do. Many preppers are more likely to have multiple weapons. The preppers focus on security. Their intense desire to protect their stockpile from those who didn't prepare means many preppers aren't outwardly visible. The serious prepper doesn't talk about their prepping plans as a way to protect it against those who might decide to take it. Preppers who do grow their own food focus on ways to keep it hidden from those who might take it. They are focused on evading the threat they feel is coming. Remote versus urban. The huge and more likely advantage of being a homesteader is space. A well-established homesteader set up himself or herself on a location where they can provide for themselves. More likely away from the suburbs and into the country where there's little threat of a collision with society and the immediate impact of a problem. The advantage of a prepper is that he or she stores the things they'll need in an instant. They can live closer to urban areas and cities. As long as they are correctly keeping with their security and not spreading the news, they have everything they need if something does happen. They can hunker down and defend their own in a more urban environment. Disadvantages. Homesteaders are long-term stay-in-place people. They cannot just get up and go at the flip of a switch. They've made their home their livelihood. To leave would be to lose everything, but the knowledge they have learned on their homesteads would have them to be able to reestablish quicker than most. Preppers have the disadvantage of weight. If they have tons of stuff, they have to transport it in case they have to bug out. This is their biggest limit, but he or she would be more planned to move than the homesteader. Either way, if either side has to leave, it's a huge disadvantage for both parties, something we have in common. I think it needs to be said out loud of why we even need to have homesteaders and preppers in the first place. This is a two-part answer. The first is stupid people. When people left the land, they left behind the knowledge and skills to live off of it. I've known folks who don't even know how to wash their own dishes without a dishwasher, who can't cook without a microwave, who don't know where milk comes from, or that wheat berries aren't berries at all. Too many people don't know how to live without their cell phones and the internet. So the second and most important part of this answer is evolution. People who had the ability to observe well saw things as they were, and they took a step back from the rat race, and they told themselves, something is not right here. Pick a subject: politics, resources, climate change, fill in the blank. Whatever it is, the direction that these things are going cannot sustain themselves. Something is going to break, and that person said, I need to prepare, and then divided themselves off into homesteaders and preppers. That's why this topic is so hard to cover, because it's a spider web into many different topics related to it. So I'll say this. While preppers and homesteaders may have very different skill sets and a different focus, both groups value self-sufficiency and freedom from the trappings of government, and how little they are willing to rely on the government. In fact, members of each group can learn from each other. Some homesteaders might benefit from a little more emphasis on security and self-defense and preparing to be mobile if it becomes necessary. Many preppers over-focused on stockpiling gear and supplies could benefit from spending a little more time on sustainability and skills to produce what they need after a shit hits the fan event. There are lessons to be learned on both sides, so it's not really a matter of which is better. preppers, or homesteaders, but instead of recognizing there are huge benefits to both lifestyles that, if adopted, can ultimately bring both groups even closer to their end goal of self-sufficiency and survival. Folks, I really hope you enjoyed this first podcast. Do me a favor, wherever it is posted, like, subscribe, and share this content. And it's really for you folks to take it in and to get the juices flowing on what you can do to take more control of your situation in life. Check us out on Patreon. The link will be provided below. You'll find more than just videos on Patreon. We have a lineup of free documents to download that will make your lives a whole bunch easier. No subscription is required, but if you feel like you want to support the channel, we have 2 very cheap tiers that pays the bills and keeps contents like this moving forward. From the BreakAway Homesteader, I wish you all a pleasant week.